Sergio, Jack, what's up, fellas? Good to see you guys. Miguel, hey. Mike, awesome. There's a few people in here. Christmas time is here. I'm not sure if that's a statement of fact or a request. But yes, I would agree. Christmas time is here, and I love it in New York. Christmas time, the lights, the music, it's awesome. Mike, killer, man. That's awesome. I'm glad it worked out. I know there was like a little bit of a issue with the site, so fantastic. Stoked. Yuri, what's up, man? Hope you're feeling well. Miles, oof. Too cold for me. My brother tried to convince me to come up and so for those of you maybe who haven't heard me talk about it or are brand new, my brother lives in Wisconsin. And he's got two kids, one of whom I haven't even met yet. My youngest nephew is going to be. When was he born? He was born during the pandemic. I think he's going to be 2. Yeah, I think he was born right at the start of the pandemic. So this April he's going to be 2, and I still haven't met the kid yet. But my brother's got a friend in Wisconsin who's, I guess, leaving for the winter and looking for someone to house sit. And the deal is you can house sit, and if you'll stay the whole winter, there's no money, but he'll leave the car. So my brother wants me to go and battle a Wisconsinian winter. I told him I'd come for the birthdays in April. Rob, what's up, man? Yes, sir. First cup here too. Ben, Howard, Paul, Steven. What's up? That's probably a good idea, Howard. Oh, I didn't know you were a Midwesterner, Mike. Awesome. Well, listen, I'm here for an hour to answer questions. Again, I'm not sure if Christmas time is here, if that was a request or not. I think we analyzed that ages ago in the older format. Jack, you may have been with us back then. Beautiful tune, some really nice upper structure tonalities and triads in there. So I'm here to answer questions. If there are none, I might just hang and practice a little bit. I was actually hanging. I took a picture of it. I'll just chat for a minute until I see questions or until I'm ready to practice. I was hanging with I've probably told you guys a little bit about this opera friend I have. And I was hanging with her last night. She had asked if I could help her with some music. I love hanging with like non-jazz trained, classically trained people. Like they have a whole different. It's so interesting. Like all these things that you would think you'd be able to talk about, like they don't really understand, and vice versa. Like she looks at music and sees and hears things completely differently than we would because they just learn music differently, especially the opera singers. But she hit me up and asked if I could help her with this piece of music. She had some questions about it. So I was hanging out with her last night looking at it. So she's going to be auditioning for a role with the Metropolitan Opera, which is like a huge fucking deal. I mean, like epically cool. I think she's worked with them a little bit in the past, but I don't know that she's ever had like a full blown role. But she has to sing this piece at her audition, and she's very old school opera. Like she does like the classic stuff, and this is a really modern piece, like those of you who've listened to kind of 20th century kind of modern classical might be able to relate. Like uh, very not Bach or Mozart or like any of the old, classic stuff that we think of. Like really advanced harmony happening, lots of huge intervallic leaps in the melody, beautiful melody, like not like annoying, but just very angular at times with like really big leaps. And so she was asking me to like help her understand it. And I was looking at it. She had the piano part, the piano accompaniment, and the vocal line. And I was reading through it and I started realizing, hey, look, I know that harmony. That's a shell voicing and a triad on top. Hey, that's almost a shell voicing and kind of a triad on top. And I went through and did a melodic triad analysis of it. And I figured out that the melody and the harmony were like basically almost completely dissociated. So the chord and the triad were completely different up until like the very end. And I found all these unbelievably cool things in it. Like the melodic progression was basically like there was a first part to the tune. It was A major and G major, back and forth was the melodic progression, but the chord progression was totally different. And then it goes from there. It went to this like weird tritone movement. Or no, it went up to from A and G back and forth. It went to A and B back and forth. So it moved up a whole step. And then the B went to a tritone to an F major triad. And like, I mean, it was just like all these super basic, like once I isolated the melodic progression out and played it just alone, we were joking that it just sounded like a Beatles tune. Like it was like a cool pop song, that moved through a couple of different keys. And then at the end, the final melodic progression before it came home to like return to tonic, where the two parts came together, the melody was A minor triad, D major triad, G major triad. It was a 2-5-1. So I showed her all this stuff in it, and it started off with her saying, she doesn't like any of these harmonies. She can't hear them, and we were kind of laughing about how much I'm like geeking out, like falling in love with every chord. She wants to analyze the whole tune, and I'm like stuck on this one measure because I'm like, this is so cool. He did it at one during the intro before the melody starts. He does a D major 7 sharp 5. Let's see if I can remember it. D major 7 sharp 5 to a D minor major 7. And he pedaled. He kept the root and the major 7 where they were, and he took the sharp 5, flattened it to the natural 5, and the major 3rd, flattened it to the minor 3rd. Just like really interesting movements you would never really think about. But anyways, it was super fun, and I kept getting stuck on every individual harmony. And at the start of it, she was like, I don't like any of this. I can't hear how the melody connects with it. It makes no sense. These chords, like they're not, again, she's used to listening to like Bach and Vivaldi and like Mozart and all these old school classic composers. And by the end, once she heard the melodic progression with just the A major, G major triad back and forth, she was like, oh my God, I can hear everything that's moving. Like this all makes sense now. And she actually was able to start hitting those intervallic leaps. So fingers crossed. I'm hoping that the audition goes well. I'm hoping that she nails the melody. Who knows? Maybe she'll drop my name at the Metropolitan Opera as like the guy who helped her sing through it. I don't know. That would be kind of epic. But it was just a fun night. I was like super geeking out. I took some pictures of it. I'll have to post them somewhere so you guys can look at it. It was written. I think it was written. We looked it up like 1950, 1953, somewhere in there. So like, not that Bill Evans was listening to this particular composer. I've never heard him mention this composer, but I know he was listening to a lot of that music when he was developing his harmonic language. All right, let's check in and see if anyone's dropped any questions in here yet. Miguel would love to hear what would be a good approach to play a given melody and comping for yourself, variations on this. So if you would play the melody 2 or 3 times in a row, you would place the comping. I'm not sure if you just mean, I'm not 100% sure you mean, hang on, there's a couple more comments from you. On different parts of the harmony, and also doing the same, but this time improvising over the form. We could use Have You Met Miss Jones. I can do the first part, playing the melody and comping, but when it comes to improvising comp, things start to get difficult. Okay, let me reread that one more time. I'm not 100% sure that I caught the whole thing. Um, would love to hear what would be okay. So we're looking for a practice approach to play a given melody. Have you met Miss Jones? How do we practice Have you met Miss Jones? Uh, Comping for yourself. So solo guitar, Have you met Miss Jones? Good practice ideas. Variations on this. So you can play the melody 2 or 3 times in a row. You would place the comping. Oh, so you're saying how do you, not necessarily improvisation, but how do you play the melody and practice putting the chords in around it is the sense I get, I think, of what you're asking about. Because you're playing the melody 2 or 3 times in a row, you'd place the comping on different parts of the harmony. So chord movement, how do we create some chord movement around the melody? I think I'm piecing this together. Sorry, it was a long comment. I want to make sure I understand it before I go off on some big long tangent. And you just commented yes. Okay, yeah, I'll talk about that for a bit. Jack is asking about Christmas time is here. Again, I do think I analyzed that at one point, but I can touch on that a little bit, and then if anyone else has any questions, we can put things in along the way. All right, let me tag or pin this comment from Miguel. So I know it's going to seem stupid and obvious, but the very first thing I have to say anytime anybody is asking this type of question, how do we play solo guitar? Specifically, the idea, not necessarily chord melody, but what I refer to kind of ironically, tongue in cheek, as melody chord, where we play a melody and then we insert chords wherever we can. Anytime anyone is working on this or asking questions about this, the very first thing that has to be said is if you can't do just the melody alone and you can't do just the comping alone, you're kind of just asking for frustration to try and do both of them at the same time creatively, which is the sense I get from your question, Miguel. Like, how do we keep the melody going while we creatively move through the form, right? That's kind of the gist of what it seems like you're asking. That's a lot to ask from ourselves if we can't do each one separately, right? It's kind of like, how do you juggle one ball in one hand? Or let's say, how do you juggle like 2 balls? Like you have one ball in your hand, one in the air, and every time this ball comes down, you throw the other one up. Like, how do you do that and 2 balls in the left hand at the same time? Well, the first step has to be to just be able to juggle 2 balls in one hand and separately juggle 2 balls in the other hand. So the first thing I would say is make sure you're practicing playing the melody like with authority, with confidence, with integrity, with like clarity of sound, strong phrasing, good time. Like everything should be there just for the melody, where you never have to think about it. Okay. I'm a pretty big believer in learning that melody in sort of a scale position so that you're not running all the way around the fretboard trying to pull it off. You can just comfortably sit in one area and play it. Then, separate from that, I would recommend working on harmonic pathways, different harmonic pathways through the tune. Just super basic shell voicing. How do we get from point A to point B? Okay, just vamping through the changes. Maybe pick one A section and just practice it over and over, and then move to the next and the next and the next. But be extremely intentional and really like create a groove and as much movement as you can. We're just looking for kind of an overwhelming amount of creativity and fun and exploration right now. That should be kind of in the bag before anything else. The next thing I would recommend after you can play the melody authoritatively with confidence and clarity, and you can get a lot of movement happening, then I would take the movement element of things and chill the fuck out a little bit with it. Like, don't play quite so much, leave plenty of space. Okay, get used to the idea of creating movement through the form, but without being overwhelming about it. Okay, lots of empty negative space. Okay. Like roughly 50% of the period of time that I was comping, somewhere around there was nothing happening. And I was doing that very intentionally on purpose. I'm trying to get used to the feeling of comping and implying the form, but not playing every chord and leaving plenty of gaps where a soloist could fill in. And ideally, this is really kind of more in the vein, usually, of where we want to be comping, anyways. So, this is just a good habit to get into and a good way to think when you're comping. It's also training us to be more relaxed with comping and not need to hit every chord and every measure, because then the next step is to try putting the two together. So, you're playing the melody, and then anytime you have a long held note, anytime you have a long held note or a rest, you can insert a chord. Okay. Again, we're hoping to find the same kind of creativity and pathways through things. In an ideal world, it would be spontaneous in the moment. If you need to, come up with two or three or four options for any given moment, right? I know I don't need to be creative about this or spontaneous. I know that on the downbeat, if I want to play a chord on beat one, I know I can play F major because that's the actual chord. I know I can play A minor because the major one and the minor three are like fraternal twins. So I know I can start on A minor. Theoretically, I'm not a big fan of using the relative minor. I know Barry Harris kind of talks a lot about, like, C major and A minor, sort of the same thing. You could start on D minor. I don't really use that one so much, but it is considered part of the tonic family and it is heavily related to it. So you could start on D minor. And then any of those, you don't have to start on the tonic family, but any of those you could then move through. How do you get to G minor, right? Or you could ignore the tonic sound and start on something more aggressive if you want to. My point being that, for any little chunk of the tune, you could theoretically work out an arrangement of two or three or four ideas and then kind of play those ideas a lot if you're having a hard time thinking on your feet. There's not necessarily anything wrong with that. Just understand that you're kind of setting yourself up to sort of be using the same movement patterns, which you're going to find. Like, I have harmonic movement riffs, like patterns that I know I like the sound of that just always work. So I end up finding those anyways. There's nothing innately wrong with it. Just make sure you're like staying aware and listening and being creative and not falling into the trap of always playing it the same way. If you have two or three or maybe even four options every couple of measures and you're kind of having fun, you know, thinking of them like puzzle pieces and picking this one and then picking that one and then picking this one, you could end up creating some pretty fun, exciting ideas. Um, right off the bat, one of the first things that comes to mind is, what if you just start on some completely out wrong diminished chord and run that diminished chord down chromatically to the F sharp diminished? I don't remember where I started. I think I started on C. That sounds where it was. Okay, that's totally wrong, but I'm following the rules of both diminished and chromatic chord movement, so it can work. There's nothing wrong with it. Again, this goes back to the idea that we can leave chords out as long as we know where we're headed and we use like the time-tested movement rules to take us there. So with something like that, you would want to figure out, like, how could that work against this melody? Because we want to prioritize the melody. This is not chord melody. This is melody chord. So play the melody, right? We have that A note. Okay. Think about, you might have to slow it down again. Think of it like phrase by phrase if you need to, and kind of put the puzzle pieces together in a variety of different ways. And then, make sure you're putting it back into tempo, back into form, back into time. Even if you need the metronome at a very slow tempo, like a ballad, and then gradually work the tempo up. Um, that's kind of a good starting point. So let's recap those steps. Make sure you can play the melody really authoritatively, ideally in one position, like a scale position. It's kind of one of the few times I actually think about and worry about scale positions is playing the melody to standards. Make sure you can do that. Make sure you spend a lot of time just exploring harmonic pathways through the tune. Okay. Then step 3, continue on exploring pathways through the tune, but leave a lot of empty space. Like, don't be obnoxious about the movement. Use the movement to serve the form, but be absent in the form a lot. Right? The background actor in a movie, the supporting character, the supporting actor is not in every scene. So don't be in every scene. Leave at least 50% of the time silent. That is a great way to get used to comping for soloists. It's also a really good way to start getting used to this idea of melody chord. Then start putting the two together. And if you need to, start very small with just, a couple of measures at a time. Okay. Ideally, jump into improvisationally as quick as possible. But if you need to, you can arrange a couple of pathways through it to get you started. And I would, just think about 2 or 3 options per little section, right? How can you start it off? If you start on F, how can you get to G, right? There's a variety of ways you could do that. Play with a couple of them. Obviously, F sharp diminished is written in the tune, or you could do D7, right? Or there might be time for a quick 1-4, 1-4, 3-6-2. That's a super classic progression to get from a 1 chord to a 2 chord. You could turn the 5 into the flat 2, and then you get that cool chromatic line. That's a variation on it. That's starting on B7. That's just tritone subbing the tonic, and then you get these descending chromatic chords that will lead you to the 2. All that kind of stuff, leave the F out like we talked about and head straight for the diminished chord. So many options, but just break it down and think about a couple, okay? And put it against the melody and see if you can make it groove. I was talking about doing this with the melody, and I just saw in your last comment that you're saying you have a hard time doing it when you're improvising. So think of, if that's the case, then play simpler and simpler and simpler melodic phrases. Improvise very simple phrases. Same steps of everything I just talked about, but just don't play the exact melody. And a good starting point, if you're struggling with it, is tinker around with the melody. Like, you don't have to improvise Charlie Parker riffs and then comp for them, right? Okay, like, borrow the melody, like, just manipulate it, play around with the melody itself. You can still use the quadratonics to help accentuate it, but sort of, even if you're just kind of stealing the rhythm of it, ba ba da da ba. Right? I'm using the rhythm of the melody. I'm just filling in different notes, borrowing from like the quadratonic. That's a good starting point. Basically, all the steps that I just talked about with getting the melody chord happening, but now like improv melody chord. All right. Jack's asking for Christmas time is here. Let me just read forward and check some of the questions again because we did do that one in the past. And I want to make sure that I don't spend the whole session analyzing a tune if there's other um, questions people are struggling with. So let me just look ahead and then I'll come back to that in a minute, Jack. Howard, simple question. To avoid finger rolls with the 3 minor triad positions, do you have a preferred fingering? Yeah, so I don't avoid finger rolls and bars forever, but I do think it's a good thing to avoid in the beginning because these triad positions are really like steel frames for developing melody. And the only way to develop strong melody and authority of sound, like I was talking to Miguel about with like getting the melody of a tune, like to have integrity to it. The only way to accomplish that is to be able to be in control of every individual note. As soon as you use a bar or a roll, you're kind of sacrificing a little bit of control or sometimes a lot of control of each individual note for ease of comfort and less movement in the hand. So the priority should always be on the sound, not on the physical technique. We need to use whatever physical technique we can make work in order to produce the best sound possible, right? We don't want to sacrifice the sound to make our left hand's job easier. So for G minor, the 3 positions: index, middle, index. Middle ring, index, middle, index. Okay, now I'm in total control of every note. You're not going to hear all 3 notes ringing out. That's not how you produce clean sounding melody. It just doesn't sound good. Right? Ring, pinky. Not, again, you don't tend to hear 2 notes like that in a melodic phrase. Okay. Later, when we get into arpeggiation, if you want to explore arpeggios using the quadratonic idea, we can bring those techniques back in. They are good for sweep picking and arpeggiating if you're going for speed. But first, before speed, has to be integrity and authority of sound with our melodies. The next position, the third one, instead of the bar or the roll, which again, I'm still sacrificing a little bit of control, not as much as the bar. The bar, I've lost total control. It's like my 2 shoes, or somebody like went under the dining room table and tied my 2 shoes together. Like I'm going to fall down if I try and walk. Instead of dealing with that way, just 2 different fingers. Index, middle, pinky. Okay. Will likely take a little bit of time to get used to it because most people don't play it that way, because from day one, we're looking for the easiest way to play it possible, when really what we should be doing is looking for the way that will give us the most amount of melodic control. Again, these shapes, their entire purpose in life for us for a long time should be simply to show us the steel frame that we can build melodies inside of. And the only way to do that is to be in total control of every individual note, right? So that you're playing a note and then it ends the second the next note starts. And then this note's ringing out, and then when the next one starts, this one drops away. We never want the 2 notes moving together, right? For melody, that's ideal, 1 note at a time. Mike, I like the melody chord concept and the practice of leaving space in the melody. Thanks. Very timely, as I was just asking you about chord melody. Yeah, for sure. We'll talk about that a lot. Miguel, fantastic. Happy to hear it, man. Howard, I've seen a couple of versions of Softly. One has a basic 2/5 all through the A section, and the other sometimes replaces the 2/5 with F minor and A flat minor. Should I know both versions? My personal opinion, learn the classic version, and then any other version you love, you can learn that also. F minor is both a harmonic substitution of D half diminished and the melodic triad that we will use to play over D half diminished. So F minor is really not that different from D half diminished. They're like fraternal twins. A flat minor, if you know your classic, old school, traditional Berkeley style music education curriculum, A flat minor is heavily related to G7, right? It's kind of like intertwined. It's a little different, but it's kind of intertwined with the altered scale. Not exactly, not if you're doing an actual A flat minor 7. Um, we would want to use like an A flat minor 6 and or minor major 7. That would imply the melodic minor, which would superimpose over the G7, which would give us the altered dominant. So that's one way to think of it. Some people just vamp the A section just like a McCoy Tyner style. Right? Can I sing it this side? Some people treat it like very like Coltrane quartet type. Still a good idea to learn the traditional old school stuff first. That's where everything grows out from. So we want to be rooted in the tradition first, and then any versions you like, we can add on top of that. Awesome, Howard. All right. I don't see any other questions coming in. Feel free to ask them. But Jack was asking about Christmas time is here, so let's do a quick conversation about that. If I remember it, I might have to pull the lead sheet up. I haven't played this in ages. So F major, 7, right? I'm always talking about, those of you who are brand new might not have heard me talk about this yet. I'm always talking about the difference between pure major and major 7. It's like, seems like such a silly idea until your ear starts to hear the difference. And then you'll be like, how did I not notice these two different sounds? They're like different universes. We're taught them as the same thing. If you can just learn to separate them out as two different sounds, it's like the simplest shift in thinking and playing and hearing, but it will open up a lot of stuff. This is a straight up major 7. How do we know that? Because the melody comes right out on that E note and has no desire to resolve to F. Right? It's F major 7 chord, but that if you try and play an F note in the melody and are honest with yourself and listening, you'll hear that F note wanting to pull down to E. So this is very clearly a major 7, not pure major. This is not E. This is not F6. This is not F add 2. This is F major 7. Okay. Or some type of the major 7 family. Maybe it's major 9. Maybe it's, it could be a major 7, sharp 11, sharp 9. How do I know that? Because the major 7, sharp 11, sharp 9 is E major triad over F major 7, right? And an E major triad embraces the E note. It's hugging the E note into itself. So it wouldn't work. Well, let's tinker with this for a minute. This is definitely not my go-to way of analyzing it, but this actually might work. Pretty dark, but I'm kind of loving it at the moment. My intonation's terrible. I can't play the lower open strings. I gotta get this thing set up. This is not Charlie Brown's Christmas Time is Here anymore. This is like the Grinch's Christmas Time is Here. All I'm doing is using the E major triad over that F major 7, Jack. And if you've done your homework, you might know that the primary tension would be tension 4. It turns the second melody note, if you do this, the C note. Usually I treat both of those notes as triad tones. And I think that's probably the smartest way to go and easiest starting point. But what I'm doing here is treating that as tension flat 6. was E major, giving me the F major 7, sharp 11, sharp 9. Pretty cool. I'm actually digging it a lot at the moment, but normally I would treat this as an A minor triad. That's the best starting point. The melody is literally an A minor triad. Like, it does not get more obvious than that. Right? It starts on that big fat major 7. We never hit the F note. This is not pure major. This is F major 7. Let me tag this in case anyone comes in the middle of this. So I would normally play A minor triad. Okay, tension 4 would be our primary. When it goes to the E flat, A minor no longer works, okay, because you don't have an E natural note over an E flat dominant chord in this context, right? So I would turn that A minor into the F major triad. So we are using F major triad, just not over the F major chord. We're using it over the E flat. That gives us our E flat 13, sharp 11, 9, Lydian dominant, okay? A minor tension 4, E flat tension 2. Man, I haven't played this in a while. Okay, so that half diminished, for B half diminished, we would generally assume, unless we see otherwise in the melody, we would generally assume our go-to triad for that is D minor, and the melody is A and F, right? That's the 3rd and the 5th. That little passing chord, you could theoretically ignore it and play over it instead of through it, but let's analyze it for now and understand that we don't necessarily have to hit it. D flat minor. Okay, D minor, D flat minor. When it gets to the A minor 7, a standard go-to classic, easy to understand upper structure triad for that is C major. It gives us just a basic A minor 7 chord. And again, the melody is G and E, straight out of the A minor triad. So D minor tension 2, D flat minor tension 2, C major tension 2. Again, another chromatic passing chord. We don't have to play it, but if we want to imply that change, B major triad tension 2. These are just descending chromatically. The trickiest part about this is remembering the shift from the minor to the major triads. D minor tension 2, D flat minor tension 2, C major tension 2, B major tension 2, B flat major tension 2. Just again, chromatically walking down. Over the C dominant, it's actually, in my ear, if you look at the melody, it's a C sus. It's not a straight ahead dominant. The melody is F. Again, I would hold on to that B flat triad. So the whole 2-5, that G minor C7, is a B flat dominant. Okay, so I would just kind of gloss over both of those chords with the same quadratonic, B flat, tension 2. Technically, the C7 would have a different primary tension note, but let's just stick with tension 2 to keep that simpler. And then it resolves to F major, but it's not major 7 anymore. Now it's major 9, right? It lands right on that 9. So let's tonicize it. Let's stabilize it. C major triad, tension 6. Okay, that will give us the C major over, what chord are we talking about? F major. So the C is the 5th, the E is the major 7th, the G is the 9th. Right, A minor. I'm just playing the triad over the chords root note right now, which I don't usually do a lot, but I just want to do that. Chris, what's up, man? Great to see you in here. We're just chatting a little bit about Christmas time this year. Okay. One little trick to this, because I think that this tune deserves the blues a lot, as I'm trying to make obvious over the opening vamp, the F major E flat dominant. The F major 7, you've got that A minor tension 4, super bluesy. Like, take advantage of that. It's fantastic. Right, add that sharp 4 extension, go for the blues inflections, like it's there for you. Over the E flat dominant, you've got F major tension 2, which means you've got your sharp 2 extension, again, bluesy phrases. The blues note over the F major is the flat 7 chord tone. And over the E flat 7 sharp 11, the bluesy note is the natural 11. So make sure that you're like finding those chord tones, but using them our way to accentuate the bluesiness. If you would like to carry that forward, minor triad tension 2 is beautiful. It's not the bluesiest quadratonic we have. So for these two half diminished chords, that minor triad tension 2 is the most harmonically respectful, and really accentuates the essence to me of the tonality, but it's not bluesy. If you want to make it bluesy, the secondary tension note for these would be tension 4. So if you would rather treat them as minor triad tension 4s instead, you can squeeze a little bit more bluesiness out of this tune. This voice, and this is root. This is for the F major 7, top of the form. Root, major 7, flat 7. Okay. No third, no fifth. Root, major 7, flat 7. What the hell is this? This is 2 notes from the shell voicing. I'm just turning it into a dyad by leaving 1 note out. Okay, that implies the sound of major 7. You almost wouldn't even hear the difference if I didn't point this out. Why can I get away with this very wrong note on top? Because I'm not thinking F major chord tones. I'm thinking A minor triad for my melodic structure. I'm just starting my phrase on the blue note, right? The sharp 4 extension. Okay, for those of you we have a few members who just joined who probably have no idea what I'm talking about. Anytime we're dealing with a minor triad tension 4, we can add the sharp 4 extension, right? It's like it glues onto the tension four, and it will always sound bluesy. You can do this any chord where a minor triad tension four works, no matter how wrong the chord tone is. You can add the sharp four extension, it will give you the sound of the blues. So I'm basically playing two notes of the shell voicing and then the sharp four extension. Right? So that's where that voicing comes from. You could do something similar with the E flat dominant, root flat 7. There's the sharp 2 extension. Right? That note sounds like the flat 7 in order to pull up. That's the chord's root note. That's E flat. Oh, that's nice. That's starting on the sharp 4 extension, which is, again, the chord tone of the flat 7, but we're treating it as the bluesy note. And then descend that note down a half step brings you to the chord tone of a natural 11. But we're going to treat it as the sharp 2 extension, which wants to pull down to the 2 and resolve us down to the root note. That was the E major triad I was using earlier. That was major 7, sharp 11, sharp 9. New members, just chromatic line connecting two triad notes. Remember the next part. I might have to pull up the lead sheet for this next section, but hopefully that gives you some ideas, at least for the main theme to get started. Let me read forward because we only have a few minutes left and check in with some other people. And then if nobody has questions, I'll pull up the lead sheet and remind myself the second half of the tune. Remember it goes to D flat, but I always forget from there. So go back to, no, it's not F, it's a B flat. I'll look it up if no one has any other questions. We'll wrap up with that. Chris, man, what's up? Great song. Found a transcript of some 15 years ago. Love it, but I remember only being able to play it as it was written. Yeah, I mean, it's a surprisingly tricky song, given how simple it looks on the paper, like how much empty space there is. The melody is not complicated, but to really turn it into a piece of music and to own it, you actually kind of have to dig below the surface a little bit. Like if you just try and play it as it's written, it can be pretty tricky. Yeah, because the melodic structure and the harmonic structure are actually pretty different. The chord progression and the triads that are governing the melody, almost everything is polytonal in that tune. That doesn't mean you have to play it that way. You could just outline the changes, but it's a pretty boring tune to outline the changes because it's not really doing much. It doesn't go anywhere. The change when it goes to that D flat major, okay, the harmonic progression is pretty interesting and exciting and beautiful, and you could make it sound cool just by outlining it. But again, like at that point, like if you can't make the main theme section of it, the F major to E flat, if you can't bring that to life, like it's going to be tough to convince anyone to pay attention when you start outlining the changes to go to the D flat. Howard, enjoying getting stuck into week 1 of the course, especially getting organized with my practice regimen. Awesome, man. Stoked to hear it. Would you recommend blitzing each week's videos to see what work needs to be done? And then, yeah, so my recommendation, again, for those of you in the study group, this doesn't apply to you. This is for the Inner Circle mentorship. Howard, my recommendation, watch the intro course, okay? And any of the intro videos in the Jazz Master Mentors. Start practicing that stuff, the quadratonics, start developing your ear to really open up and like accept these sensations of melodic tension and resolution and the different colors and emotions that we're talking about. Check that out and start working on that actively and developing your ear with the ear training, the emotion ear training stuff. And then, work on that for a little while you're working on that. Put every video in the course on 2x speed and just kind of like speed binge watch as much of the program as you can, at least the first like 6 weeks worth, just to see where everything's headed. So you have a sort of a roadmap of the big picture. You have an understanding of where we're headed. And then you can, go back and either work through it chronologically if you want, or you can, if you want to jump straight to comping, that's fine too. Whatever you want to do from there. But I think I'm always a fan of understanding the big picture before asking anybody to like overly commit to anything. But some people prefer not to worry about it and just move through it. That's cool too. That works. All right. Let me, I don't see any other questions at the moment. So let me pull that chart up. And analyze the second half of the tune. Let's see how much of this I agree with and how much I disagree with. That's always a fun game. All right, so D flat major. The G flat, that's right, that's where it is. I couldn't remember the second chord in it. Okay, so the book is saying D flat major 9. It could be. We don't have enough information yet to know whether it's major 9 or major 7. Okay. One would be an F minor triad. One would be an A flat major triad. They are both certainly reasonable, very related to each other. Again, we could potentially, if we wanted to get real wacky, we could turn this into that major 7 sharp 11 sharp 9 that I was talking about earlier by using the C major triad. Would give a very aggressive, dark, intense presence to the tune. Kind of loving it at the moment, maybe from all the modern classical music I was analyzing last night. But definitely not a good starting point. If you're still working on the tune and still getting used to upper structure, triads, and tonalities, let's not worry about that. Get too out there. I'm going to go ahead and personally say that based on how bluesy and dark and minorish the first half feels, even though it starts on F major 7, using that A minor triad gives it a very morose, kind of dark feel to it. I love that because it ends on the major version. It ends on that C major triad. So it's sort of a transition from darkness into light, which, I mean, you think about just the story of Christmas time, that's the whole purpose of the holiday. Like, it's literally a movement from darkness into light, right? Or the non-Christmas time of the year where everyone's caught up with the BS, moving into the Christmas time where everyone's like hanging with family and relaxing and enjoying time together. So I like that movement. I think it serves the tune very well. So I'm going to go ahead and say, even though we don't know 100% and we could change this, I would treat the D flat as a major 7, not a major 9. I would play an F minor triad. Again, another reason to pick that, we're moving from the F major sound, an F major chord, left hand, F major, the actual chord, not the triad. in the first section, it's an F major chord. Now we are melodically implying a movement to the sound of F minor. We're switching to an F minor triad, which gives us that sensation that like we've gone from lightness back into dark, which is again just like a cool way to control the storytelling of this tune. Chris, I did get a chance to start going through the first part of the intro video. Awesome. If you'll want to spend quite a bit of time, yeah, for sure, man. Take your time with it. No rush. It's definitely a way of thinking that most people are not used to, and it's like a big thing that sets us apart. So, from Charlie Brown to Chucky, yeah, I love that. The dark Christmas time is here. So, where do we leave off? D flat major, I would treat as major 7, F minor triad. G flat 13, sharp 11, I would treat, again, it lands on the C note, so I want to tonicize that C note. So I would treat this as the 13 sharp 11 9 that we use, right? So A flat major triad, tension 2. Okay, again, we have the blues accessible to us with both of these now. We have F minor tension 4. Right. Again, you can jump at that same voicing that I talked about earlier. Again, major triad tension 2, you've got the blues. Okay, we can bring all that wonderful humanity into this sort of tricky tune. Like it's not just a ton of 2-5-1s. That 1 to flat 7 dominant, the backdoor dominant, can be a little tough to learn to play over until you learn to hear it as something more simple. F minor, A flat major, right? A relative minor to a relative major, darkness to light. Like this is Christmas time is here. Okay. A minor, quick harmonic analysis. That E flat dominant, if it's in your real book, that's just dominant movement. That's straight out of our chord movement studies. Jack, for the G flat 7 in the bridge, A flat major, tension flat 6. You can use tension flat 6. Technically speaking, that's our secondary tension note. Our primary is tension 2. And that tension 2 will give you the ability to kind of gloss over the tritone, so you're not hearing the 3rd and flat 7, and creating that sort of aggressive dominant D type thing, and gives you access to the blues. So I would recommend you at least play with tension 2 first. Tension flat 6 is a great tension note. It really brings out the dominant nature of this chord. So here's tension 2. Oh, there it is. Versus tension flat 6. Little more aggressive and in your face. Awesome sound though. In some ways it accentuates things more so because it brings the flat 7 of the chord in, which really makes this feel like a dominant chord. You can also mix and match them and use both and have our melodic triad pentatonic scale. Okay, both work, both can be combined. A minor, dominant movement to a 2, right? Dominant movement. Well, I guess it's dominant movement, not to a 2, to like a 6 chord. Then the dominant movement to 2. So this is just a 3-6-2-5 harmonically. Melodically, that appears to be a root structure triad to me. A minor. Howard, did you see what I just played? I don't know if you're still on, but I just ran through an A minor triad and I, without even thinking, played it with the index, middle index. Now over the E flat, if you want to play it, you can gloss over it, but notice that the two melody notes are A and C. Okay, again, two notes from F major triad, same triad we used for the E flat dominant earlier in the tune. Those of you guys who are very new to us, if this is like confusing as hell and going over your head, that is super normal. Don't freak out. I'm going to walk you through the process of learning how to understand the words I'm talking about, how to find the quadratonics. This is tune application. So that's why I don't teach tune application right away. Cause like I want to be able to communicate. I'm talking about specific colors and sounds and harmonies and melodies that you will learn along the way and that you'll then be able to control because you see the simplest shapes and versions of it on the fretboard, and then you just have access to them. But with Jack, he's already been through all that stuff. So we're just doing some tune application here, and I'm trying to fly through it to get through the whole thing before 2 minutes ago, which obviously I'm not going to get to. The E flat. Okay, so this measure I would treat as A minor. Actually, you know what? I would not treat this as A minor. The A minor 7 chord, I would treat it as an F major triad. Okay, tension 2. Why? Because, well, I might take that back. There's a few different options. Normally when I see a 3 chord, a minor 3 chord in a major key, it's like a fraternal twin to the tonic. It's just an inversion of the tonic. So I'm wondering if this A minor is really F major over A. That's like a good way to think about the minor 3 chord in a major key. I was talking about that earlier with Miguel when I was comping through Happy Memphis Jones. I was saying if we want to get away from F major but still start on a home bass note, on a home bass chord, we could start on A minor. Like you don't even have to think about it. It'll just always work. So I'm wondering if that could work here, but I'm also wondering if this A minor, if we want to kind of shout back to what we were playing at the beginning, which was an A minor triad over F major, moving to an E flat dominant chord. So this measure could kind of be seen either way. No, I think it should be minor. So we're going to do A minor tension 4, okay? Because tension 2 does not work when it's the third of a key. It's like the only time we really want to avoid that tension 2, because tension 2 would be a B natural note, very aggressive against the flow of this key signature. So this would be F major tension 4 moving. I'm sorry, A minor tension 4 moving to F major tension 2. It's the same melodic progression as earlier, but it's in a shorter period of time. It's in one measure rather than dragged out over, 4 measures? Or is it 2 measures? 2 measures. Same melodic progression, A minor tension 4, but quick, within one measure instead of 2 measures. The D9 or the D dominant, the D9 I would treat as A minor again, okay? C and A, straight out of an A minor triad. Our primary tension would be tension 6. Again, tension 4 does work and it's super bluesy, so you could stick with that A minor tension 4 and keep that very rootsy, grounded, static, minor bluesy kind of sound happening. That works. Okay. The real book I'm looking at says D7 flat 9 on that last note. We could do that, or you could just treat that B flat note as a sort of anticipation of the 2 chord, the G minor that's about to happen. If you want to switch to D7 flat 9, I might just recommend root structure. So D major tension flat 2 to get that 7 flat 9 sound. This is beautiful, the G minor. So here I would do G minor, B flat major chord. I'm sorry, I said that backward. G minor 7 chord, B flat major triad. No, what am I talking about? G minor triad, root structure. Tension 2. Okay, this is the 2 chord. Tension 2 is perfect. The D flat, right? D flat dominant. It's the same kind of thing that keeps happening. He keeps using this 13 sharp 11 9, the tritone sub Lydian dominant thing. So this would be E flat major tension 2. And then a nice big old C7 chord with an A note up on top. There's our big old beautiful classic 13 flat 9. Just doesn't get more beautiful when resolving to a major tonic. So for the C7, I would use A major tension flat 2. And then it goes back to the beginning. We got through it. I wasn't sure we would. We went a little bit over. Hopefully, I'm not making you guys late to anything. Yeah, maybe I'll add that one back into the mix. We did. I forget how long ago it was. I think it was back like in the first year when we started, when we just had like monthly stuff constantly coming in new. So that's the tune. Really think about that dance between the darkness and the light. Like it's pretty epic how much that's happening here and how much that means to the story. Now, did Vince actively think about that when he was composing this? I have not the slightest clue, and frankly, I don't give a fuck because it's in the sound. Great composers like Duke Ellington even talked about that he thought of himself more as a painter of sound than a piano player or a composer. Like I've read some super interesting interviews with him where he talks about the idea of like painting pictures for people with sound. So these emotions that I'm discussing, whether it's polytonal stuff with an upper structure triad over a chord or basic root structure stuff, which is equally as important, these have colors and emotions built into them, right? Some people are going to hear them a little differently, but it's worth just accepting that minor triads have a sad, deep, soulful sound, and major triads have a bright, joyful, wonderful, light-filled sound. This tune is a lot of dancing back and forth between that dark and light color. So that's kind of a music theory or melodic triads theory look at the tune, mixed with just kind of like the concept of storytelling and philosophy and humanity. Usually the greatest tunes have both working in their favor. Like there's some cool music theory stuff, intellectual stuff. There's also some cool like human heart stuff, because that's why they're time tested and why people emotionally connect with them, because it's not just following rules. Like it's painting pictures, it's telling stories, it's conveying something deeper than math can point at. That's it. Chris, I got to run. Unfortunately, just want to stop in for a few to hang. Awesome, man. Last 4 hours of work till January 7th. Oh, cool. Almost there. Should have lots more time to work on music. Killer, man. I'm around if you need anything. Howard, you're welcome for the example. Glad you can make it to open office hours. Glad you dug it. Stoked to have you with us. Miles, you're welcome. Happy holidays. Likewise, man. Merry Christmas to everybody. Belated Happy Hanukkah to any of the tribe out there hanging with us. Happy New Year. I actually, is this our last one before New Year? Yeah, our next one will be January 2nd. So hopefully you guys will have recovered from whatever you do. December 31st, you have a whole day to relax on January 1st, and then I'll be around on the 2nd for open office hours. And in the inner circle, I'm not planning on canceling any mentorship calls, I don't think, but they're obviously not required. Yeah, because none of them are on Christmas. So I'm planning on doing all of them, I think. If not, I'll send an email out or something, but I'm planning on being around for all those. Jack, you're welcome, man. Thanks for asking. Such a great tune. Steven, yes, sir. Super fun. Miguel, you're welcome. Happy holidays. Chris, How High the Moon, a good example of this. Oh, it's an epic example. It's straight up, the whole opening section is just a bunch of straight ahead, easy to spot quadratonics. G major tension 2, G minor tension 2, F major tension 2, F minor tension 2. Like, there's no chromaticism in it. There's no leading tones. There's nothing fancy. There's no big intervallic leaps. It's literally like a scalar way to express. I just threw in a different quadratonic that is not in the melody, but it's part. I'm expressing the dominant nature of the C7 chord that's about to take me to the F major tension 2. Again, you can throw in those sharp 2 extensions. Now you can take the melody of How High the Moon and play it with a little bit of a bluesy flair. Okay. Yeah, that'll be in the vault at some point. The new format for the tune studies is a little different than the way we used to do it. So I'm kind of like bringing things in slowly and dripping them in. But that will be in the studies at some point for sure. Still hanging. Awesome, man. Paul, you're welcome. Merry Christmas. Chris, glad you dig it. Thanks for hanging. Yuri, always great to see you, man. Feel well. Hope everything's going well. Rest up. Talk to you guys soon. Mentorship calls are on. Next open office hours is in January. Can't believe it'll be next year already, 2022. Take care, everybody. Happy practicing. Keep making some beautiful sounds. The world needs it. Talk soon, guys. Happy New Year. Merry Christmas.